Okay, welcome to Heavybit's workshop panel on early stage growth ops. I've been talking to a bunch of you folks in the audience about building early stage growth engines, and I realized that while I have a playbook for the platonic ideal of a sales and marketing machine, I didn't really know what those first steps looked like. At what stage do you need to invest in Salesforce? At what stage do you need to invest in an email automation tool? What stuff do you need to buy tooling for, and what stuff can you get away with in Google Spreadsheets? So I assembled a team of really crack operators to talk us through their experience building out these growth engines, and I'm super excited to dive into it. We've got Nicolas Draca, who runs marketing at HackerRank and was formerly the CMO of Twilio. We've got Andrea Echstenkamper, who runs marketing at our very own LaunchDarkly. And we've got Luke Whiting, the COO of Clearbit, formerly of Heroku. You guys ready to dive in?
Yes.
Ready. I want to start with you and the products you're selling now. Maybe we could just hear a little bit about what you're selling and who your audience is.
Yes, and a quick fix, I was not CMO at Twilio, as it's recorded. I was VP of Marketing at Twilio.
Oh, thank you.
There was somebody leading marketing. So today, and I've been here at HackerRank for 6 months, before 2 years at Twilio, 5 years at LinkedIn. And at HackerRank, what we do is we match every developer to the right job. So we have a community play where, as developer, you can come and learn to code, practice to code, and compete. That's for the community side of the business. And then that we do not monetize. The platform is free. And then on the other side, we have a platform, an assessment platform, allowing recruiter and hiring manager to assess developer through the hiring process that we sell to recruiter and hiring managers.
Cool. Andrea?
Great. So I'm at LaunchDarkly, and what we do is help eliminate the risk from development cycle, as well as help you deliver value to customers faster and with more control. And a lot of that is through the magic of feature flagging. We sell primarily to kind of VP of engineering, kind of head of certain departments within engineering and product.
So I'm at Clearbit. We are a business data provider. So we sell primarily to sales and marketing teams who want to get to know their customers better. You send us an IP address or email address, and we can tell you any number of things about those customers, from job titles to locations to employee counts for businesses. We can also help you find new customers with our prospecting tools.
I want to start by talking about metrics. So let's imagine that you just stepped into an early stage company, there is no marketing team, and your job is to manage growth. What do you start tracking from day one?
So, want to start? Okay. So I had the chance of doing that exercise actually recently with a company here. And so there is an assumption that there is no metric. And I think that assumption is wrong. You have data, you have something that's going to help you get somewhere. What I mean by that is, at worst case, you have your website traffic, you have some concept of sign up or conversion, depending on what type of call to action you put on your website. And you have a concept of revenue further down, even if you're not making money, but there's a concept of pipeline and revenue that you can define any way you want, but those concepts do exist. So the first thing to do, I think, is, so you ask about like CRM and complex system, and take a Google sheet and try to build that concept of cohort on a monthly basis, trying to define a set of stages. Again, whatever are those stages, you can start like with web traffic, sign up, after I'm sure we'll go deeper, but different stages, and start capturing the data that you have and put them into that Google sheet, and looking back at the data. Whenever you started your business is when you have the first data, and that might not be perfect, but this will give you an idea about what you have and an idea about conversion rate.
That's exactly how we did it at LaunchDarkly, is kind of start out with the sheet where it's going to be your source of truth. Maybe you're pulling it from a lot of different places at the beginning, and then later on when you have systems, you're still probably pulling them in there so that there's one place where you have that information that existed at that exact time. But another layer is to also put in what marketing campaigns, what what influential things happened during that week or that month, so that you can see what's really affecting those individual metrics.
I think it's really important, particularly in the early stages, that you don't neglect talking to customers. I think you can build out a funnel, but really, especially in the early days, you should be talking to customers. And it's the kind of thing that doesn't necessarily scale. If you have a self-serve model, you need to be getting in touch with those customers. Why did they buy? What did they find interesting about your product? And I feel like, from my perspective, you really need to be able to understand those kind of fundamental questions before kind of moving on to the maybe the more data-driven side of things.
Interesting. Andrea, Nick, do you guys do qualitative research up front?
Yeah, so you do a good catch on this. I will consider it. I'll put it in the data bucket. It's customer knowledge, customer research.
Yep.
And there are ways, either you do it manually, depending on the volume you get. You do it, like you say, it's time consuming, but it's worth it, because what you assume, you cannot assume. Right. And you want to understand and try to identify the use case where people have been able to move through that funnel and get somewhere. And again, don't go with, like, you can assume things, but be open to reassess and to really take and listen to customer feedback, because at the end of the day, as a customer is king and they are the one buying. If you go back to metrics, the metrics I will be tracking, I have to say I don't look at website as I have a concept of KPI and metrics. So I track 3 KPI. KPI would be, one will be email open, meaning in any communication, it looks like a super tactical metric, but it's just to see for marketing campaign from if yes, no, you are engaging with the right people, or if yes, no, your content is relevant. I tend to move out of that email open pretty quickly, but I think to get started is a good way to try to get a sense about the quality of the database and how you're doing from an execution standpoint. The second one, depending on the type of business you're in, it's either SQL, so pipeline creation, as a count, or if you are in the on-demand business, self-serve, I think the concept of a product active, I'm sure we'll talk more about funnel, but defining a stage in the funnel, which is not the person visited your website, the person did sign up, that's not really going to help, but they did some meaningful interaction within your product that you have to decide with yourself, I have to say, of what this is. So a count of product active by cohort, and yeah, I'll go for 2. I'll go for those 2. And if I go for a third one, actually, is the number, and I'm going to piggyback on what you said, the number of time you talk to a customer. I think you have to set this as a metric. It's like five meetings a week, whatever it is.
It's like very early stage. The metric you're tracking is how many conversations am I having a week?
Yeah, I'll go. And this will be a forcing function, because then you're going to say, I haven't done it this week. Right. I have to do it. Because quickly we do it like for the first 2 weeks and then forget about it. I really like that concept.
And then I feel like once you kind of understand, the profile of your ideal buyer, then you can start tracking qualified leads. You kind of have a profile, and then it's, what marketing activities are driving qualified leads? Like, what are the channels or methods that are driving?
So you guys both use this terminology. Nicolas, you called it an SQL. Luke, you're referring to a qualified lead. What is a qualified lead in this context?
I think it's someone who's like most likely to buy your product. That I think you can measure that from buyer, kind of a buyer profile or persona, or it's if you want to get really detailed, it can be what activities are they performing on your site. Have they signed up for an account? Are they playing around with the free trial? Have they viewed marketing pages? If you have white papers, have they downloaded a white paper? I mean, those can all kind of play into that scoring model.
Cool. We'll come back to SQLs later. I want to talk a little bit about tooling. Nicolas, you said day one, totally fine to just dump all this stuff in Google Sheets, and Andrea, yes, you echoed that.
Yep.
What are the fundamental pieces of infrastructure that I should start to invest in from the early days?
So yeah, kind of from there, what do you start thinking about? So eventually you are going to need a CRM. You are going to need email automation, whether that becomes marketing automation at some point. You're going to want to set up Google Analytics as soon as possible with goals, so that you could see, what are these sources that people are even spending time on our site, even before they get to sign up. If there's a problem before there, even just to kind of take some hypotheses about who you think your audience would be and who's going to pay attention. And then also, at some point, you're going to want to look into segment.
What is segment? How does that fit into your stack?
So segment, everyone's looking at me. So we're big fans of segment at Clearbit. Segment is essentially a marketing data hub. So the idea is that you can feed data from multiple sources into segment, and that can be through one of their integrations where they're pulling data from Salesforce or pulling data from another marketing tool, or it can be completely custom where you're using one of their APIs to dump in your own analytics data. The advantage of using segment is that once you have the data in segment, you can then fan it out to any other source where it might be useful. So as an example, at Clearbit, we dump all of Clearbit data and marketing activity data into segment, and then we then push it into our marketing automation tool. We can then send emails based on the data that we have from segment. We also dump all of that data eventually flows through segment and into Redshift for our data warehouse. We can then build SQL queries that show us the entire life cycle of a customer's relationship with Clearbit, all the way from the first page view down through the purchase and closing of an opportunity in Salesforce. So that's kind of a high-level overview of what segment provides and why we find it very valuable.
And then in addition to kind of bringing all these together and kind of what is this one user doing across all of, from Zendesk to production app to Salesforce, there's also benefits around protection for your app, just security. And then there's also the fact that there's less loading time for kind of SEO purposes.
And so just to add on this, because it could be also pretty confusing as of today, you can pick from, I don't know if it's 2,000, 3,000 piece of technology in marketing as of, what is the latest number? I'm looking at your ends at business.
That number sounds right.
Yeah, so it's pretty overwhelming. So what is exciting is you can solve anything you want with technology as of today. What is less exciting, it's first, it's pricey. Two, it's overwhelming because more technology you have, more technology you're gonna have to manage. And then as we have developer in the room, you're like, okay, I can build it myself, which is a bad idea. Don't do that. And I'm going to tell you why, because if you build it yourself, it means you're going to have to maintain it, which means after you're going to hire a marketer who's not going to be able to use it. And it's a chicken and egg, the number of hours you're going to put in like coding these things. So long story short, you want to start simple. And what you need, as you said, is CRM and email marketing, which will become one day marketing automation. You have two paths. I don't work for any company in that space, by the way. You have a path where you can go HubSpot. Many people start with HubSpot. This is what I've seen. Or they start, and HubSpot as a free CRM. I'm not sure about the last piece, but I think CRM is free as part of the package. And you have to get started somewhere, or you go directly Salesforce, and Salesforce acquire Pardot, and it's supposed to be fully integrated. I haven't been using it, but this is what I've seen many startups do when they get started. There is a price to it, just to be clear, but it is worth the investment, because if you don't do it, then you're going to either build your own thing or you're going to spend cycle trying to understand what's going on and you will not know what's going on. So there is a little bit of a premium, but you need to start with that foundation of email marketing CRM for the thing to work and to equip your team to see what is going on.
So you absolutely need email marketing and you need CRM.
Yes.
And Salesforce plus Pardot or HubSpot plus HubSpot fill both those roles.
This is what I've seen, but I don't know what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a pre-phase where your CRM is your inbox, and you're doing analytics in Google Sheets, which is totally fine, and I think is where you should start. I'm of the opinion on the CRM side that all roads eventually lead to Salesforce, and so the sooner you can bite that bullet and invest in Salesforce, the happier you'll be down the road. Most people that I've seen who've started elsewhere end up moving to Salesforce at some point eventually, and you'll just save yourself the headache of switching if you just start there.
Andrea, I see you
Agreed.
nodding and smiling.
Agreed. Yeah, it's just kind of inevitable.
So at what point do we bite the bullet? Like, when do you have to move from my inbox to I need to spend money on Salesforce?
I think one of the driver, depending on the volume you're dealing with, again, developer land versus pure B2B, I think volume is a driver. When you start having like inbox work, fully agree with that. Then if you have a big like sign up flow and you work from developer sign up, going the path of like converting or paying, like if you start having like thousands of download, the inbox is going to explode. If you're pure B2B play and you're trying to play with 50, 100 customer, you can manage it. But I think there is that kind of like, okay, my inbox is going to explode and I cannot follow on it. The second one could be, hey, we hire somebody to do marketing full time, or we have a consultant at half time, and we're starting to be, I'm going to say, sophisticated, such as we're executing marketing campaign. And like that could be another driver where you need the tooling to do it.
For me, the goalpost feels like when you hire your first salesperson.
And that's when we did it, yeah.
That's when we did it at Clearbit as well. When, we kind of early stage, or a bunch of people doing a little bit of sales and a little bit of marketing. But when we've hired our first real sales reps, that was kind of the time when we realized we should.
Yep, that makes sense.
Time to bite the bullet.
Right, and also two different people, you want one place where it all lives.
Right, I think the other thing is sales reps in general don't like learning new tools generally, and most of them are already using Salesforce. And so their job is hard enough, you might as well not make it harder by forcing them to learn a different tool.
This is what we call a moat in venture world.
Yes.
Salesforce stranglehold. I want to shift topics a little bit to strategy and like parsing all this data. You've told us that at some point you should invest in Segment, and Segment's going to help you get all the numbers in one place. Let's assume that at this stage you don't have a BI team. You don't have a full-time analyst who can write SQL queries. How do you actually extract actionable information out of Segment or your data warehouse?
So Clearbit is maybe a little unique in that most of the early team was fairly technical and SQL proficient. So for us, it was the right decision was to put everything in Redshift via Segment. We use Mode on top of Redshift as our kind of querying interface. Mode, and there's similar tools like Looker and Periscope that will let you run queries on top of Redshift, build charts and reporting and that sort of thing. That was the right decision for us because we had the SQL proficiency on the team to make use of the actual data. But I'm wondering if you might have some comments on how to extract insights from maybe a less technical team.
So what I've seen, and even with what I've seen being successful, so the big dream is to have that dashboard that's going to refresh every day or every minute, and you're going to see your pipeline, whatever data, and either you have great support, which looks like you had, or I'm going to go back to Google Doc, and I'm going to explain why. That big dream of having all this data, like no matter what, if you go for your top 5 KPI, you're going to have to pull this data from at least 3 systems, no matter what. So the big dream of having the unique dashboard and the data warehouse and the data mart and everything, if either you have the resource and everybody is super bullish about it to build it, which is possible. If not, what's gonna happen, and I have a super strong point of view on this one, by the way, is like you're gonna run in circle trying to shoot for the perfect dashboard, and more or less you're gonna over-engineer it without never getting the inside of it. And even being at a company like HackerRank, hardcore developer, Twilio, hardcore developer, when I started at Twilio, I moved to Google Doc, and we were like 300 people, and we were trying to solve for the magical dashboard, but we moved to Google Doc initially. Why? Because we had to pull from multiple systems. That was one. The second one is there was no agreement on what we wanted to measure. So we started spinning a project, and we had resources where I had one of the data analysts in Looker building a fantastic dashboard, spent like 2 weeks on it, to pipe behind the scene, like working with the data engineers, which most of the time, normally if you're smaller, you don't have, but like working for 2 weeks, and the exec looked at it, I presented at the E-team meeting, and I'm like, beautiful dashboard, exactly what you guys asked. So first, I had 2 minutes to present it at the end of the meeting, And then they're like, interesting, but we look at this once every 3 weeks. And I'm like, what? Like, we've been working on this for like a couple of weeks. And they're like, yes, that's not what we need. And so my learnings from that experience, and I've seen it in many companies, is what do you want to measure? And it will take some time to do two things. What to agree on what you want to measure, and I know after we're going to talk about funnels, so I'm not going to cover that topic. The second one is and to learn how the data, like I think data are beautiful, like you look at it, but it takes you some time to appreciate the dynamic of the business and how your pipeline or your leads or your sign up are moving through the funnel. What is pretty fascinating is it takes you like 2 to 3 weeks to look at it, and it doesn't change much actually. Even when you go back in time, except if you made a major change, such as hire a salesperson, did a fantastic campaign, or hire marketers. But it takes that I'm going to even go a month. It's like you said with the dashboard, a month to appreciate and understand and to have that level of conversation. So I'll go Google Doc, 1 month of learning and looking at the dynamic of the data. Always look back. Everybody says, I'm going to look at current months. I'm like, no, whatever. Go back in time. Look at what happened. Between having nothing and something, you'd better have something. So I do not hesitate to try to go back 12 months, even if the data are bad, but just to get a sense and to get that sense about when we believe the data are better and what is trending. It's all about trend. Knowing that at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to have your KPI, you want to have agreement on what you want to measure. And after there's lots of discussion saying, okay, what is the benchmark? Let's talk to the guy sitting next to me or another company about the benchmark. The benchmark initially is yourself. The benchmark is good. It's good to have a benchmark to see what's going on. But what you want to do is you want to measure against yourself and improve whatever KPI you have and understand and being in control. And when you are at that level of in control and you measure against yourself and you have a sense about what's going on, then you move to the industry benchmark. That's my pretty strong point of view actually on that part.
So Luke, at Clearbit, reporting happens in SQL, sometimes using a tool like Mode. Nicolas, you're a fan of using Google Sheets in the early days because you can iterate quickly. Yes. Andrea, what does reporting look like at LaunchDarkly?
Yeah, again, we're also using Google Sheets to bring lots of things together. But I know this son, Nicolas, does it as well. But we have a lot of our campaigns live in Salesforce, and a lot of them all drive to there. And by keeping them all in there, we're really able to see a lot of marketing effectiveness.
We have some really early stage folks in the audience. So could you just tell us what a campaign means in this context and how that lives in Salesforce?
So a campaign can be, anything from just any event that you've done. So if you have a way to connect people back to that event, if that is a source of referral from a piece of content, and you're using UTM tracking, you can bring a campaign in like that. Anything that you're able to say, this is a piece that we did and we put out in the world and we hoped it to have an effect.
Great, thank you. I want to go back to the funnel.
Yeah.
So at this point, we've got some preliminary tooling. We've got all our data in one place, kind of, and we have a preliminary understanding of what our funnel looks like. We're measuring sign-ups, sign up to product activation to paid, maybe even some downstream metrics. How do you decide what the first number to work on is? How do you prioritize work here?
Well, so recently, our CEO, Edith Harbaugh, was speaking at SaaStr, and she gave a really great talk. Look this up once the video's live, on build versus buy. Mm-hmm. And she said, the biggest problem when you're a new company is that no one knows who you are. And then the second biggest problem is that they don't care. And really, if you're a teeny tiny company, you're not going to be able to affect a lot of different pieces within the funnel. Like, look at top of funnel and know that maybe you will have to stop on working on top of funnel campaigns for a couple weeks to build your onboarding process. But know that means that you're going to work on that and not your top of funnel. But if no one knows who you are, you're never going to be able to get them all the way through the funnel. So I think you kind of have to start there.
Great.
Yeah, I think you underscored an important point. It's like, make sure that you've answered like the kind of deeper fundamental questions about your business before you start worrying about building out a fancy funnel with lots of fancy reporting and lots of data. I mean, data is important, but intuition is also incredibly important.
Right.
And you don't develop that intuition about your business without talking to lots of customers and doing, just being really kind of immersed in the world of your buyers,
Right.
really.
Take that idea of hypothesis-driven development
Right.
and apply it to marketing and think, great, I think that as a company that's trying to create a category, we maybe need to do a lot of content or something like that. Have these hypotheses or have a hypothesis that this is your target audience. But instead of rolling all of that out, find the first layer, the friends and family to talk to. If you're here at Heavybit, you can talk to other member companies, which was really beneficial to us. And then find the next small thing to do and keep getting that feedback on your messaging so you can be improving on that as you start improving your channels and finding the ones that are going to work for you.
Don't underestimate the power of a well-written cold email, too. It works.
Yep. If you're able to articulate your value proposition, a cold email is a great way to get first awareness.
Right, and again, you don't necessarily need to expect that the folks that you're cold emailing will buy from you, but they will, at the very least, in many cases, be willing to help or talk. So I think very early stage, maybe that's your funnel. It's how many cold emails am I sending or conversations am I having that are resulting from those.
So you two are telling me that top of funnel takes precedence over everything else. I do want to hear from you on this, Nicolas.
Yeah, so on this one, you need to you cannot solve for it. So the big dream is lifetime value. Actually, you want to solve for lifetime value. And no company solve for that. And then you have to be a 10,000 employee company to solve for lifetime value. But this is the dream. And you want to build your campaign against lifetime value of a customer. So that's not going to happen. So the point I'm trying to make here is, in a perfect world, you have a funnel and you have multiple steps. And what you want to solve for is saying, okay, as a company, what is success 6 months from now, okay, at the company level? And then looking at that, and this is what I do every time. It's not like I change job often, but every time I start a new job, which I did recently 6 months ago, or when I have the chance to talk to one of you guys, I'm like, okay, what are you, before you start explaining to me like all your marketing tactics, like let's pause for 2 seconds. What is success for your company 6 months from now? And success can be many things. We want to have 2 customers in production, and success has to be an objective with a number next to it. And based on that, there is marketing playbook that you can decide, and you can decide either to invest on top of funnel, mid funnel, there are so many things you can do. It's overwhelming. But I think aligning to the company goal is number one. And yes, it will match to one of the stages of funnel. If you are in a high, I'll go back to developer land, but like signups type of thing, your funnel is going to look like, I'm going to put the different stages, but after we're going to kill a couple. So website visit, sign up, completed sign up. Completed sign up is non-spam, or people that are real human being. Because today there is a game when you are in a CS degree, the first piece of code you have to write is how you're going to be able to create accounts on any website you find as much as you can, which is a major challenge, right? Because you have all this data, like if they decide to play with your website, it's going to be a little bit of an issue of having like fake users. Then there is a concept of product active, as I stated before. Whatever you define as product active, it could be they went to a specific section of your product, or they key something, or they activated something, push code used. You have to define, you just have to, and then after there is that concept of put their credit card, if it's credit card business, and they've been spending over time. And so initially, if you oversimplify that thing, you want to look at completed sign up and product active by cohort. And this will keep you busy if you have a high volume of inquiry of signups. If you look by cohort, by month, it will give you some really good idea. And I did that exercise 2 times recently with somebody here. And quickly, and I think the feedback was like, I have no data. And within a call of half an hour, we've been able to see that he has improved the onboarding process because he was highly focusing on it. We've seen a higher conversion rate from completed sign up to product active. and some tactics, and he was able to scope and understand what he should do next, aligning with his objective as a company. If you look on the B2B side of the house, the funnel here is standard, and there are benchmarks that you don't have to use, but it's inquiry, it's anybody filling in a form. MQL is marketing qualify, whatever it means. You have to decide, it could be based on persona, who they are, the company size, whatever you want. And after there is that big step, I'm going to skip SQL. So SQL is a sales qualify leads. It means people that either budget or a project, to oversimplify that definition, and then close. On this part of the funnel, what you want to look at initially, because you're not going to have scoring, you look at inquiries and SQL. Okay, and you start there and to try to get a sense about what people are filling in and how many goes through that strong definition of SQL. I'm recommending for people to be pretty strict on that definition because it's a little bit of a gate telling you that yes, there is really something going on. The challenge sometime was early startup, and I've been coaching, I'm just showing personal experience here. It's mixing up pipeline with revenue and real pipeline with future revenue. So you just want to have that reality check saying, hey, the guy is excited, meaning you're more excited than he is, which is a good thing. But it's like, okay, is he really excited to the point of, yes, there is a timeline, or there is a budget, and then we can consider this as pipeline. And after you can balance, I fully agree on the cold email and everything that was said before, but if you think hardcore funnel, this is what it is about. You don't want to over-engineer it. You don't want to overthink it. I personally had a small startup, less than 7 people, and the biggest mistake I've ever made is just looking at those spreadsheets all day long and getting excited and not talking to customer. And I learned my lesson. It was a bad idea because you can do this like all day long.
A funnel implies that there are customers moving through that funnel in the first place.
Yeah, you need people. You need people.
So
So
that's
talk
not
to
happening,
whoever you
start there.
can. Yeah, talk to anyone you can if you don't have customers.
Well, and I think too, we can also get kind of carried away with, SQLs and MQLs and it's kind of foreign and sophisticated sounding. But really, a marketing qualified lead could be someone signed up for your newsletter. Like a sales qualified lead could be someone filled out a form and it appears that they're a good buyer for our product, right? I mean, I think what you said, we don't need to kind of over-engineer or overcomplicate things initially.
You guys keep talking about SQLs, and Luke, you said that an SQL can either be a function of like how a customer is using your product, or an SQL can be determined by who the customer is. Can you tell us a little bit more about the qualification criteria you use for an SQL?
Sure. So from the product user's perspective, is this a customer that, if you have a self-serve or a freemium model, are they using the product, right? If they sign up for a trial, they're active in the trial, however you measure the success of that trial, they've kind of cleared that threshold. At Facebook early on, it was, have you added, was it 3 friends or 5 friends? That was kind of the minimum threshold that they wanted to get everyone kind of over. But obviously, on the other side of the equation, if the VP of sales at a really hot company fills out a form saying, I want to buy your product, does it matter that they've had any product usage? No, they want to buy. They're raising their hand saying, I would like to buy your product. They fit the target market. You should go after that.
Some good strategies for lead scoring. Andrea, do you want to take this one?
One is have marketing automation that helps you do it. There's kind of 2 parts to lead scoring. There's scoring by activity, where every time they're on the website or every time they fill out a form, they're increasing the score. And then there's also the idea of scoring based on who they are, whether or not they are part of your target market. But at LaunchDarkly, we use marketing automation for that.
And after he's not going to say it, it's too polite. You can use technologies for data augmentation. So Clearbit does that. And the point that is important in scoring is, again, you start simple. You have 2 dimensions. It's behavior or demographic. And you, based on your business and who you're selling after, we just went through that exercise at HackerRank. I sat with the sales team, not like for hours, but we sat together saying, what is the perfect customer and who do we want to sell to, and like title wise and company size and industry, and then we go with a V1 where not everybody agrees. It's okay. It's like it's a V1. Let's chill. Let's implement it. And the first thing you want to do actually is not share, depending on the size of your sales team and so on, and depending on the volume, not share it initially, and try to capture behind the scene and understand if yes, no is the score you put together does translate into conversion. If you don't do that kind of like 2 weeks test to look at it, what's going to happen, it's called a self-prophecy, is you're going to tell your sales team, say, call them, they're better. Don't call them, they are worse. And guess what happened? The one you told them to call are better because they didn't call the other. So you just want to validate your scoring program behind the scene it doesn't need to run for 6 months, right? But a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't think you need to get super sophisticated about lead scoring early on. In my opinion, you don't need to come up with like a numerical scale between 1 and 100, or just think really, I think, back to basics. Clearbit, our Salesforce integration drives a lot of revenue for us. We can use Clearbit data to understand if someone is likely to have purchased Salesforce already. So if someone signs up and they are already a Salesforce user, chances are they're a good fit for our product. And that's someone who's maybe a little more worth talking to than someone else who doesn't fit that criteria.
So do you just have a binary yes/no lead score?
It's kind of, are these valuable leads or not?
As we have free, it's pretty simple. It's called Sales Simple. It's for salespeople to understand. 3 stars, call them now. 1 star, call them when you're done with the 3 stars. No star, don't follow up.
How do you pull all these things together into one marketing campaign?
So the way we do it, which is not necessarily the one true way, but we use a tool called Custom.io. The reason we like Custom.io is they support a fairly powerful templating language called Liquid. So what Liquid allows you to do is, since we have Clearbit data already and we use Segment, we pump usage data into Segment, Clearbit data into Segment. That then flows into Custom.io. So we have a rich set of attributes for all of our customers in Custom.io. So these are signups, people who've signed up for a newsletter, et cetera. And so we have demographic details, we have product usage details, and then from there we can build really crisp segments in Custom.io. And even within those segments, we can dynamically change messaging using the Liquid templating language.
We said that your 2 big choices for marketing automation tools are Salesforce's Pardot or HubSpot. And we threw out Marketo as sort of a 3rd choice there. And Luke, you just said that you're using a different tool, Customer.io. When did that fit into your roadmap?
We started using Customer.io pretty early on. We used it. It was definitely in use before I joined, and I was employee number 7.
Andrea, Nicolas, how do you guys feed product usage data into your email automation system?
So that's the dream, because the level of insight you get is pretty fantastic. I'm gonna go, so at LinkedIn, I never had it. Like the into CRM, just to be clear. At Twilio, not better. And here at HackerRank, I don't have it either. Feeding into CRM. And so the way we had to work is to build a data mart where we would feed the other way around. Data mart would be at the core. You will have product data flowing in. You will have CRM data and marketing automation data in one place. It was a piece of art. Like, you really had all the data to do segmentation and targeting. And it took us some time. It took us 6 months as a project. Super scary, everything I said. I'm going to go back to a simpler version. It took us 6 months as a project to be at that level of sophistication where we spend the time and the energy to get all the data. There is a workaround. This is what I've done at HackerRank for now. It's not great, but that's as good as it gets. I'm getting an export through FTP for now of Redshift data from the product with email address, sign up date, active date, and some other field that I manually match through Mercato into Mercato that push it into Salesforce. And based on this, the marketing campaign I built behind the scene. I'm sure customer IO is better. We don't have segment, but that's what we did. By the way, to get started, like those type of manual import work nicely, but it doesn't scale, just to be clear, because you cannot on the fly. It's like, you have a picture at one point.
Right.
I know it works because I'm a big data guy. I love, and I measured behind the scene of, hey, if somebody is engaged on product, how is your conversion rate? Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Like it works, but at scale, I haven't solved for it in a simpler way yet.
The holy grail, and it's hard to get to, I think, until the perfect marketing automation tool exists.
Which does not exist.
Which it does not. Never underestimate the power of a CSV export and Google Sheets. I think a lot of segmentation happens by hand. Exporting data, munging it, cleaning it, and kind of building those lists, and then some sort of mail merge tool. So nothing wrong with humble beginnings.
Andrea, I see you nodding. Are you running campaigns based on how customers are using LaunchDarkly?
On some level, we do use Segment to bring certain pieces from the production app into Pardot and Salesforce. So we have some information, but there's a lot of levels of sophistication we have left to go.
I think there's no tool that out of the box is going to get product data into your marketing automation tool. No tool that I'm aware of. Even
to what we did.
Right. Even our segment integration, we have a series of scripts behind the scenes that are pulling the data from our product and sending it into segment. So there's definitely custom development work that we've done on that end.
And it's worth doing. Like the thing I really want to have as a message is it get quickly marketing, and I was discussing it with somebody else just before on another meeting. Is overwhelming. You can do so many things like this. You can work on a project like this for months, and you will see progress. Really having like this, like, hey, let's pause. Let's see what we want to solve for. Let's see how much time it's going to take, and being sure that we do the right thing is really important. I do not believe, I was sharing this on the prep call, that there are any technology gap, whereas you're right, actually there is one. There is not that perfect tool that pull, but you can buy so many technologies, right? The issue and the major challenge is agreement on the goal and process. That's the issue. Once you're clear on what you want to solve for, and there is agreement on the whatever it is, a funnel, a thing like the measure of success, then it will get easier. You just have to focus, which is always tough, and start a plan because there is so many things you want to touch. But it's really, and I love technology. I was running marketing operations for all of LinkedIn worldwide. So I had B2B businesses, online, old credit card, and consumer. And so I have a team of 100 people, and every day I would have somebody saying, oh, we want to buy that, and I have time, I'll do it on the side. I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. But the point is, even whatever scale you are, it never stops. It never stops. And making the right, I don't think there's a perfect approach to it, but making those right decisions is really, really important, I think.
Tools to monitor conversations outside of your existing channels. How do you stay on top of Twitter, Reddit?
Nothing good on my end.
No.
Yeah, Hootsuite would be one just for Twitter, but
yeah, we use Zendesk as a social monitoring tool for Twitter. I think Front on the support side also kind of has some social monitoring tools.
Now, there is a cool tool, like something we're exploring. I don't even remember the name of the vendor, but no, there are bots that replace SDR. I love SDR. I appreciate them. But the point is they don't follow up on everything, sales development rep. And now it's Conversica or, no. Okay. So there is a new technology we're going to play with where more or less you just throw your lead there, and the bot that you can name as you want, Bob, Eric, Olivia, Alexandra, will start engaging with the prospect. And he's able to understand like what's going on, ask questions, and it means like nobody gets untouched. So all the big discussion we had on scoring and everything, you can kill part of it. You activate that bot, and then based on a threshold, you can reroute this to the salesperson. It's something new. I think it costs a little bit of money, so that's where I'm getting stuck. But the point is It's a people are even creating like LinkedIn profile. I will not name the company who did that, but more or less the person has a LinkedIn profile with a picture and everything. Her name is Alexandra, and you can go pretty deep now through that automation, which is pretty cool because one of the big challenges, one is do you have the resources to catch up with the lead flow, and then the qualification and the MQL, this solve for all of it, right? Because if you have a certain like level of engagement, you can say, okay, sales follow up on it. Pretty excited by that.
So what's the distinction between a sales conversation and a marketing conversation with a customer? Andrea, you're smiling.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about what that would be. Certainly feedback from sales is just as important as well. But for me, a marketing conversation is part of is what was your journey to finding us? What was it that brought you in the door, and what convinced you that this was going to be the right solution for you? And really just hearing that story, and then also kind of trying to put together some of these hypotheses that you have about, for us it's, have you feature flagged before? Therefore, if you've already done feature flagging, therefore you're going to be more likely to buy us. Things like that, and just kind of collecting those stories over time and starting to create those relationships that you'll also need for case studies and things like that. And so you always have somebody to say, hey, I'm curious, what do you think about this before you release it to the whole world?
Yeah, initially, I'm not sure if there's much of a distinction. I think you're just talking to customers initially, right? You are probably the sales and marketing team at your startup, right? So I think further on down the road, I think there's of course more distinctions there, but
yeah, so if I jump on a sales call, most of the time I would not say a word, like I'll be a ghost. And what I'm interested in is how is the discussion going and how is the salesperson doing the pitch, right? And I'll do like 5 or 10 of those in 1 week. I try to stick with the same sales rep, meaning it depends on the size, right? But why? Because otherwise, like everybody has their style and everything. But just to more or less, I go to the VP of sales and I'm like, okay, where's the 2 best one, and I'm gonna go there. And here, the output of those discussion for me is I'm gonna be able to work on pitch deck, and train the sales team based on their feedback on how I believe they should do discovery, pitch, and so on. After it's up to them to use it. So that's one part. The second one, having a one-on-one with a customer, will be more from a product standpoint, like think product marketing or product, and it's discussing and more going deeper on the use case and what they are solving for. Even if they decide, even on close lost deal, right? You can do it on close lost, close won, like existing customer you lost against, and here it's really to understand like the connection between the use case, the market, and the product you're building, and again to try to do many of those. No matter what, I've never been disappointed on any time I met with a customer. You learn something every single time.
It's been a big theme during this panel, talk to your customers. And on that note, I'd like to thank the 3 of you. This has been really educational. Please stick around. Some of us will be hanging around. If you've got further questions, come find us.
Thank you.